All right. Good evening, everyone. It is April 22nd. This is the Board of Adjustment meeting for Town of Anger. I hereby call it to order. Our alternate, Mr. Eric Julian, tonight is going to lead us in the pledge and invocation.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dear Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for this time that we can come and do town business. Lord, I pray you give us wisdom, help us to listen, to understand what's going on, to make it.
So Mr. Julian is joining us tonight. He is my personal favorite alternate, so I'm glad that he's here. All right. We all have the agenda. Are there any amendments to the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve it.
Motion to approve.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. That's unanimous. We do have to knock out the minutes from November. That is the last time we had a meeting. So the minutes have been in the packet. If everyone's good with them, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'm going to make the motion to approve the minutes.
All right.
Could I suggest that we make one amendment? I was looking at it, I forgot to write it down. My name is not spelled with an E on the end. Just a simple clerical issue, but
Which part?
it's actually under section 1, and I don't see it all the time. So normally it's something that I see from
I
time
see
to
it
time.
there.
It's corrected in one spot, but I did see it in one. It just happened to jump
Yep.
out and hit me.
That's fine. I'd like to amend your motion.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of that amended? Unanimous. All right. We have 2 items tonight. Both of them are evidentiary, and so anyone who's wishing to speak for any of those, please come up here and join Ms. Hardaway. She will swear you in. All right, new business number 1 is a variance application. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing, and then Mr. Jones can present it to us.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the Board of Adjustment. Tonight you have 2 cases. The first one is a variance case. The variance case is located at 327 Creekhaven, which is in the Neels Point neighborhood. The request is to reduce the front setback by 2.7 feet. This is the aerial of the property. It's under development. But here's sort of the situation, and the applicant can testify as to what occurred. But the home is 2.7 feet over the setback line. You can see the setback line is in the dotted line here, and the home protrudes just a little bit over. And that was caught at the end of the project, essentially. But Kerry Buckner with DRB is here, and he can explain the case and what occurred. And I think I have some photos that he sent to me that he'll show you all as part of his testimony. Okay?
All right.
All right.
Is that other plot plan there as well?
The They have it in their packet. That's what's out there today.
If you don't mind using the microphone, sir, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
All good.
it doesn't get recorded if you don't.
I got you. Yeah, so my name's Kerry Buckner, and I'm with the RB Group. I appreciate you guys hearing our plea today. So what took place originally, this home was considered a pre-sale, where we sell the home in advance. It was to be an elevation, I think, 2. Shortly after selling the home, it canned. The buyers decided they did not want to purchase it. We decided to upgrade the elevation to a 3, which changed the depth of the front porch. The mistake that we made when we pinned the home, we pinned it, I wanted to show you, we pinned it to the original front corners, which would have worked with the original elevation. It would have kept the smaller front porch beyond that front 20-foot setback. But because we did not catch that mistake and it was pinned in the same location, the front porch extended out over it. The home is fully built. We noticed it the day before closing when we got our final survey. And we wanted to call it to everybody's attention and ask for forgiveness. Yeah, so it's the second house you see, the gray one. So, looking at it from an angle, and if you're out there in person, you cannot tell. I can't tell. I've been building for quite a while, and I don't think the naked eye is going to show that to anybody. So we do have buyers. They are sitting, waiting to move in. They are out of state and anxious to hear from us this evening, hoping that we were able to obtain this variance. We did bring some plans to show everybody, different measurements in case anybody wanted to see that.
So we have in our packet, but it's not up here, a survey that is labeled old, I imagine, and that says Drayton 2 slab on it. Is that the one that the town approved?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so you guys, Jeff's team was not sent the new plot plan. That was the mistake. We have an internal process where we approve plot plans, and when this was originally sold, everybody at DRB who signs off on it, we signed off on that Drayton, or the elevation 2. But again, the mistake was made when the sale canned. We ordered new plans. We ordered everything except for the new plot plan, which would have bumped the home back a little bit to account for that extended front porch. So we've created a new spot, or a new check we're doing with sales that have added a new look at plot plans and trying to prevent this. We've built, I don't know how many homes out here, quite a few, and we try to take pride in not doing stuff like this. We've built Cotswold, Spring Village, everything in Neels Point. We've recently started Station Point, and this is the first time we've made this big error.
Any questions from the board?
Yes, sir.
Is there an inspection that's required once you start building the home, that everything has to meet these specs, and then you get signed off on and then go further to the next part?
You want to talk more about that? We do different surveys. Do we do a foundation surveys for slabs if it's not on the setbacks?
I don't believe it's required here.
The-
So that's not typical. There wouldn't typically be, with this exact situation, they're very similar in the way those houses, I mean, it's the same house essentially, it's just slightly different. So and I'm sorry, I'm with the production team, so my guys are the ones who built it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so this particular situation would have been, it's very difficult to catch once it's past the permitting phase, because to my team and to the naked eye, once they started, the pins looked correct. Everything matched up. It matched with their plans. Everything that was in the field when the inspections team was coming out, everything was matching that set of plans and was built according to those and looked correct. So it's very difficult if it isn't caught up front until a final survey is done. And then that obviously, all of a sudden, it's like, oh my goodness, why is this not where it's supposed to be? But like Carrie said, typically we do go through, and my team as well as one other team, we go through at the beginning, and my team did look at the original, said, okay, we're good, we're within setbacks, there aren't any issues here, there's nothing that would be a problem. It met the approvals, it got the signatures, and then the house rolled back, and then that's kind of, as he explained, that's where it came. But there's not, I guess that would be the part where it's very difficult to catch something like this until there is that secondary survey done, because from the boots on the ground perspective, everything lined up. Like everything the surveyor put on the ground, every step of the way, it matched everything. It just was at the end. Literally, I think 2 days before the closing, the final survey, just the final approval. And that's when, it came back, and luckily Kerry saw it, and we raised our hand and said, guys, we made a mistake, and we held our closing as well. So our buyers, like he said, are pretty anxious because they've waited a month for us to kind of let them know what would happen here. But did that answer your question?
It does.
Sorry.
As soon as we found out, we reached out to Mr. Jones to make him aware of the issue and bring it to everybody's attention.
What is the downside of it being, I guess you guys are asking for a 2.7 foot setback? Are there infrastructure underneath that 2.7 feet?
Above it. So,
There's no gas lines or sewer lines or water lines running underneath that?
no.
So
there-
the city
Only
would
come out
never,
the sides.
the city would never have to come and do work in the yard and be in that right of way, and then like they've got this, and they have to move out 2.7 feet and go around.
Yeah, the city won't be responsible for, they're only responsible for the curb to the right-of-way, which is well in front of that variance that we're asking for. So, yeah, they'll not be responsible for anything that's under that 2.7 feet.
Okay, that answers my question.
Jeff, we require an as-built survey as part of final inspections for a zoning inspection on new construction.
Well, so here's what the ordinance does say. It says any home that is within 5 feet of their setback should produce a foundation survey. That has not been the practice of the town of Angier while I've been here, prior to. Because every home, the 800 that we've permitted, would have to have a foundation survey. So we would be inundated with foundation surveys, and it would probably slow these guys up because we would require it before the next building inspection occurred. So the ordinance does say that, has not been the practice. And I don't, at what point would the slab and that foundation survey would have been, if the town required a foundation survey, when would that have been required? When would y'all have done that?
Right after the foundation.
Right after the
It would have
slab?
been known
Yeah.
a long time ago.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So that is what the ordinance states. We could start that practice of requiring that and figuring out how to administer. And so we would not have this, this instance, and we've had one other last year.
This particular instance, though, sounds like there was a change made after the initial approval, and that change was not relayed to whom it needed to go. That's how I'm understanding.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that's
So
Right.
that secondary plan is really the ball drop, not necessarily the first, because the first would have fit within its
Right.
parameters. So that,
Absolutely, yeah. When staff looked at it, it met the setbacks, and we signed off on it, and they went.
This is on DRB.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
our mistake.
Yeah.
We messed this up. So.
yeah. Well,
But should it have been caught by our inspectors?
Well, what it would have been is a foundation survey would have been required, and there would have been some point in the inspection process that there would not have been further inspections, and we would have the step where, all these foundation surveys come in, and we would check them, sign off, and check off, and then they would be able to continue on with their permitting. Now, we've had 2 out of the hundreds of homes that we've permitted over the last several years. So, these,
That we know about, because if they hadn't brought this to us,
We wouldn't know.
I don't think you're not gonna.
We
get
might
any
never
homes
know.
closed, though. So many lawyers and
Yeah.
surveyors see this stuff
Yeah.
as it progresses. Our surveyor is the one who brought it to our attention.
Was gonna
They
ask
took
that.
final survey and they immediately sent us an email, and that's when we reached out to Mr. Jones.
Well, thanks for your honesty.
Jeff, what is that ordinance? Do you recall the number or whatever?
I do not recall
No,
what the
okay.
section is, but
We'll
there
find
is
it
there
later.
is an ordinance there is a sentence in the ordinance that does require that.
Jeff, can you go back to the pictures that he added, that showed the houses?
Here,
Yep. So if you go back to the house, which would be 158, is that the same elevation, or would have been your elevation too?
so
The one you see is what, the gray house right
Right.
there is the one that we have built and that is over the setback.
Correct.
Yes.
The one beside it.
this one,
No, not that one. The other
this
one.
Okay, let me.
I don't know which elevation. We have
I guess
7
one.
or 8 floor plans, and each of those floor plans have 4 or 5 elevations. So I'm not sure, but with all the jogs that you see, the different jogs that we have for our front porches and those different elevations, that's where standing out there in person, you can't see. It's to the naked eye. No one would have ever noticed that without the survey.
So was the two houses beside it, were they built already, or did you build them all kind of in a sequence?
Those were already built. This one just came in line behind those two.
Okay.
The ones on each side.
And the reason why I say that is, having worked on houses before, as you're putting the roof up and as you're doing everything else, somebody should have noticed that it was not in line with the house right beside it. I mean, it's you look at it, yes, it's only 1 yard, but it does make a difference if you look at it. That front porch, as compared to the way it looked, does actually, I mean, it adds a great new appeal to it. It actually looks, I think it looks more attractive with the whole porch on there than just the little stoop as you would have walked in.
Yeah.
But in my head, looking at it, I know the lot on 156, based on your pictures, looks like it's even farther back. But the other one, and that's kind of one of the initial piece that y'all put in, I'm glad you sent these pictures, because the initial piece you sent in was a vacant lot with nothing anywhere around it.
Well, that was an aerial of
Yep.
what I put.
Yep.
GIS.
So, it's hard to tell. You're right. I just wish your builders would have looked down at some point and went, this doesn't quite look right. Because so many of these neighborhoods are using such a minor sliver of difference between
Elevations.
between the setbacks, that somebody should have noticed at some point long before at that point.
Yeah. Without that plot plan, it is very tough, but yeah, I don't know if they could have caught it or not, but it's our mistake. There's no doubt about it.
This question is more for Dan. If the variance is approved and 5 years or 10 years from in the future, there's an issue that house is too close to the street or whatever, whose responsibility would it be to fix or repair or change?
Once the variance is granted, essentially what the variance does is exempt them from that requirement of the setback and say that your new requirement is 2 point whatever feet
So
additional.
It would
So
fall back to the town.
we
at
would have
that point.
approved them to have that porch where it is.
But it's still outside of the right of way, so it's the homeowner's property. It won't be, it's not in the town's property.
So one of the things.
Uh-huh.
So one of the things I wanted to sort of talk about was the ordinance itself. In 3.42 is the dimensional table. It's R6 is the zoning. And front setbacks, we actually have a little bit of different if it's alley loaded or front loaded. because we're really, and it's 20 foot for front-loaded garage, and we're really concerned about that garage being 20 feet back, because we want people to be able to park and not hang over the right-of-way. So in the spirit of the ordinance, it feels like this, if you look at the plot plan, it's more than 20 feet back. So it's the porch that is overhanging. When the ordinance is trying to make sure that there's parking in that driveway outside of the 20-foot setback. So
Well, thank you for sharing that, because that
Yeah.
goes to the intent of the ordinance.
that's one of the reasons I wanted to point that out for you all
Yeah.
whenever you going through deliberation.
While you're up here, Jeff, and I'm gonna read this to you, but it could be out of context, and I don't expect you to know if it is or not. In our ordinance section 15.1.1, section D reads, final building and zoning inspections for CO and as-built survey should be submitted by the developer to the administrator upon completion of the building foundation to ensure that setbacks and building orientation match the approved site plan. And section E
So we have it
is
located
development.
there.
I don't think E applies. E is for a larger subdivision. So I don't know. This might not have an impact on this specific case, but
The ordinance.
we don't want to see
speaks-
this happen.
Yeah, the ordinance does speak to foundation surveys in that location and in 3.4.
It's 3.41 B. Actually, I'm sorry, 3.41C,
Yeah.
and it says a foundation survey shall be required on all lots less than or equal to 15,000 square feet, or when said structure is located within 3 feet of a building envelope.
And I can tell you that's going to be about every house
Uh-huh.
because
Yeah.
I review all the houses
We're
that
not
come
even
through,
approving our
and
Yeah.
some of them are right on the setback line.
Mm-hmm.
They're small lots, and they're
Right,
trying
they're
to
designed to,
maximize their lot size, their area that they can build in. So yes, the ordinance does say that, and we certainly can start figuring out how to implement that and what that would do on the production side.
I'm curious to check that, because what I don't want to do is, if this is not approved, to punish them for bringing it to our attention.
Correct.
If we wouldn't have caught it otherwise. So this is not necessarily specific to this case, but
Yeah.
because that's always the question that is in my mind when we consider any of these is, how did this happen? How do we prevent it from happening again?
our first finding of fact is unnecessary hardship result from strict application.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're gonna say that one, then look at C.
C is the
The
one
hardship
that's getting me.
did not result in the actions of the applicant or the property owner, which in this case, there's no way you can say it did not happen because of their actions.
Mhm.
So how do we approve it with that
Mhm.
wording? So we'd have to,
It really will fall back. Oh, well, so should we close the public hearing before we go into?
If
Well-
y'all are ready for deliberation.
Are
if
there
you
any
have
more
other
questions for them for
Yeah.
evidentiary?
Yeah. This might have already been said, but so Ed, at what point after the first sale, or I guess at what point did the house start being built? Was it, did the first sale not go through, but I guess happen and then start being built and then?
No, that first sale, when it fell through, by the time it fell through, we had still not started the home yet. Our permitting process takes a couple of months, and so we had already turned this in, but the home had not started, other than pins going in the ground, which are used to identify our form boards that form up the concrete slab. And that was the error. That never got redone. So, and, we're hoping with the verdict or whatever today, we're hoping to take the buyers into consideration, because we've weighed like what could be done with this home. And, somebody asked, can you shorten it? Can you take the front porch and cut
Yeah,
things
yeah.
back? And it turns to a sliver where the porch is no longer usable. All of our trusses are designed by engineers, and their loads are out at certain points. And if we start shaving things, it turns things, it changes things. If they were stick-built trusses that the custom builders do, might be a little bit easier to tweak things because of the loads, but we have load-bearing points all the way down from the top down through those footings, and it's that front perimeter where those footings are at. And so, you know,
So
There's
the
none.
elevation 2 doesn't have that. The elevation 2 is, at least from my understanding, is essentially the same, but it doesn't have the porch sticking out.
I thought
overhead.
we had a plot plan, but
Yeah.
it's
It's in the
No, I
packet.
do actually here. I have the plot plan. That'll be an easier aerial version to show.
he can show you the difference between the two. So
Yeah, it's in the. I mean, it's in the. From what I can see in the packet, it looks like just the.
So this, that's the old version. So you can
Yeah.
see, I mean, it looks incredibly similar. Sorry, it's a little hard to flip.
But it's an
That's the
entryway,
original.
there's no porch.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Just an
And then
entryway.
that
No
little piece out front is the lead.
And the concrete only comes around to the driveway.
Right.
And then this is the new one. And you can see, like, that's why it was so easy to miss, because the whole
Yeah.
footprint is essentially the same. It's really this front portion, just this area.
Yeah, so it seems to me it's more of the.
Do you mind showing them the same
overhang?
thing?
I think this is the same one that we have in our
Well,
packet.
I mean, if anybody wants to see it, I don't
Yes.
want
We
to.
saw
Understand it very clearly there.
Yeah, on page 11.
Yeah.
So if you weren't to get the variant, well, I was gonna say, you might have answered this too. So if you weren't to get the variance, could you take off just the overhang, and would, I don't know, maybe, yeah, I don't know, would that then be within code?
We would never providing the buyers what they are expecting, for one, and I don't know, engineers would have to be involved. I'm not an engineer, so it would definitely take other members, and then you probably got to re-permit things, and I'm not sure. I don't know.
Is the porch part of the truss system, or is it an add-on
They-
stick built?
No, they have their own truss system off the front, so, and they tie into that main wall.
So it's a wall-mounted small trusses for the porch.
Correct.
These
Okay.
shorter trusses, yeah.
Yeah, we brought the plans.
And let's say that there was no porch there, would, or no overhang, would the concrete, or would that would still
Because that's
count
still,
against
it's
the,
It's
still
base.
structurally.
That's a question for you, Jeff.
Foundationally,
Is
it's
the
still-
porch concrete? If the roof wasn't there, is the concrete in violation, or
No,
is it?
Things at grade, patios, driveways
Things
at
at
grade,
grade.
those can go to the property
Okay.
line.
Okay.
It's when you start going vertical with structures, that's when you
Mhm.
have to meet the setbacks.
and just to be clear, so you were saying the porch is or may be load bearing, the columns there, or is
Yeah,
that-
yeah, those columns, the 3 columns on the front, those are carrying a load all the way down from the front of that front porch, and then the
Okay.
front wall of the house is another load-bearing system that carries the main trusses from the main roof all the way down.
Okay. Now, I guess, are the columns only holding up the overhang, or just the?
That's right.
Okay.
No, that's right.
Yeah, because the second floor is not cantilevered, right? It's flush with the
That's
first
right,
floor wall.
yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of the, and you guys can correct me, but when they do front porches like this a lot, they're trusses, but they're add-on trusses that are applied to
Okay.
the wall.
But to give them that front elevation,
Mhm.
you gotta start looking at cutting rooms back off the front if you wanna still give them that appearance. And so then you're starting to talk about, shrinking the square footage of homes. If you push that back, now you're pushing the the front back to maybe be closer to being flush with the garage face, or do you push the garage face back further? Unfortunately, it's not a simple fix.
Well, it seems like you could keep the bedrooms the way they are, but just take off the overhang. I mean, that it seems like that could be one remedy.
It could be,
Okay.
but that's not what they,
Yeah, it's not what the
right,
buyer.
and that's, I guess, at the end of the day, we messed up, but we're trying to avoid punishing the buyer being the one who ends up.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the, like, that's kind of we're trying to preserve what they have anticipated and try to make sure that they're getting what
So-
they had anticipated getting, and.
This is their build.
Yeah,
Yes.
correct.
So they were part of the planning process. They were part of choosing what style they liked.
They
And
came in afterwards, and I don't know if they picked the specific elevation.
Uh-huh.
I think we spec'd it when
Right.
that original sale canned, but
Okay.
they came in very quickly after that and
Yeah.
have been
They
expecting
are aware
this.
of the elevation that that's what they
Pick-
bought, is
And they
the- is
obviously
this
know,
elevation.
they
yeah.
obviously know of the delay that we caused here because of this.
Yeah.
So as you guys build houses in the future, which I assume you're going to continue to build houses, what is in place to keep it from happening again?
There's a kind of a trigger mechanism for that canned sale about checking plot plans and making sure that we go through the full list of reissuing things.
Can,
So,
can we require, and this may be a question for Dan, can the city require that we look at the houses before they build them, not just the inspection part? I think we need to start the inspection where we have to go out and look, but can we require that they, on a monthly or quarterly basis, show us that you're not coming in over the line? Because it's as easy as it is to make that mistake, it's gonna be a lot easier still to make it again a second time.
So I don't think we can impose that requirement on them specifically, but we can, when the Board of Commissioners meets, they can craft language for an ordinance that does have those requirements. We do have like the foundation survey requirement already that
right.
sounds like it's not really
It's not been
being
done.
used. So
And that
there's
would've
that
been-
tool.
And I plan to have that as a part of the discussion. So, that is,
We have ordinances. to
So it
prevent
really
this.
falls upon the town did not do an inspection, or
It's
it's
not an
not been our
inspection.
practice.
It's not
or-
an inspection.
Um,
It is them
Foundation survey.
producing a survey and us looking at the survey and saying, okay, you
and
meet. you
we
meet
would have
setback.
caught it at that point, but
Correct.
that's not been our practice.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Jones, so that would take pretty much a whole nother person or two,
right.
the way
Well,
our town is growing, to handle those inspections?
That would be a step in the process of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. These guys are building as quickly as they can, probably would build quicker if we had more inspectors. And the step of having to produce a foundation survey would just need to be baked into their timeline. And they would have to figure out how to make sure that they have their surveyor in place, and that surveyor can produce that survey and give it to the town prior to the next inspection being requested. So they would do a foundation slab inspection, and then we would require a foundation survey to be produced at that time. That, depending on how they have their survey team rolling, that could be a delay on their part. I don't know.
If
We'll have
it
to-
becomes a regular practice that we're doing that, it would be a delay for the first one. After
Well,
that,
they
it
would
be a
have,
general
again, they
practice.
would have to figure out how to
Mhm.
figure out their timeline. I
Mm.
mean, and that's,
Yeah.
and then we would be, however many they need to be reviewed in that particular day, they would have to be reviewed in a timely fashion because they're waiting on town to review so they can go on to the next inspection.
We're gonna do what you guys require, though. If it's something y'all need, we're gonna do it, because this is the business we choose to be in. And, I think there's one or two municipalities that do require foundation surveys, and we do it there. So, completely up to you guys, and we'll do it, so.
It is
I
very-
think
It
what
it
you-
is, just to clarify, it is currently written into the ordinance, so there is technically a requirement for that to be done. And it sounds like we've just not been doing that. The question of whether we should or shouldn't do that
Is not,
is not really
Relevant
before this
tonight.
board, right?
Right. And the good thing is, most of us have been around here for a while. If we get this case next month and the month after that and the month after that, then we very clearly, don't approve anything ever again. But
If
You know.
we were to do a survey of homes that are already built, that you guys may not have caught this.
We would, I feel absolutely sure that you won't find another one of ours over, because we do those final surveys, and those are always going to catch that. They will always catch it.
And you
Okay.
I've been
probably
with
would have
DRB
if
for
in the
11
original
years.
people that were doing it, too.
Say
They-
that,
I think you probably would have caught it if it was still with the original people, but because we have a new buyer now,
well, yeah, it never would have changed,
It
and so
never
it would
would
have
have
been
changed.
within those setbacks. And so I've been with DRB 11 years now, and this is the first one, so.
And I think their practice is fairly universal, where at, near the close,
Yeah. I
there's
mean,
gonna be a survey produced, so,
Right.
so it can be given to the new property owner.
I mean, they've built a few homes. They're pretty good at it.
Yeah.
They've done it a few times.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll talk about the ordinance stuff at a Board of Commissioners meeting, but it doesn't sit great with me knowing that this could have been caught at the foundation point and remedied with some concrete work.
It's a lot easier for us to tear that out than the whole
Yeah.
house.
Yeah, which I can appreciate. So we'll move past that part of it, I guess. But all right, any other questions before we discuss? We'll still have an opportunity to discuss amongst ourselves after we close that public hearing. All right, then I will close the public hearing. Jeff or Veronica, would you mind? Perfect. All right.
Before you get going, I do want to remind you, because it's a variance,
Mhm.
requires 4/5 approval, which is 80%, which means with a 7-person board, only 1 no. And
All right, so Steve, you haven't done this before. We're gonna read through these criteria. These criteria, each one has to be passed with at least 6 out of 7 yes votes for it to work. If any one of these 4 don't get at least 6 yes votes, then the whole thing is done. All right, guys, well, we could discuss it now. Most of us have seen these 4, and I speak only for myself when I say reasonably. I could say yes on A and D. I'm having a hard time with B and C, given the quasi judicial nature of what we're doing here. And Everett, you mentioned C. That's a hard one to justify in a quasi judicial setting.
It is a hard one to justify, but the question would be, could you word that as the provided variance would negate the hardship caused by? So there's actually some wording you could say there, or do we have to go with that the wording as C itself? Because yes, he admitted it was their fault, but allowing the variant actually fixes that issue. So it's kind of how do you legally say we're going to allow it?
I'm not
Both
sure.
those words.
Yeah, and just to speak to that, I'm not sure that I do think you have to abide by the letter of it because it's statutory in part.
Mm-hmm.
They have admitted it was a mistake. You could potentially find that there were other factors that could have, that were
There
not
are
their
other-
fault
Right.
that played in here, but that's up to the board.
There is a condition we could consider for C, in that if we had required that foundation survey, like is in our ordinance, the mistake would have been caught and the hardship certainly not as significant as it is now.
They're not solely to blame.
So we could,
And I think the
we could consider
responsibility
that, I
falls
think.
directly on us.
I think there's responsibilities spread all over this
Both
one.
ways, yeah.
yeah.
It's
all
not
around.
just squarely on one side or the other, not the side per se.
Mm-hmm. So D, especially
Up and into the foundation survey, the actions they had taken, the submission of the plan would have been prior to that foundation. So that, having been the first wrong,
But if they had layout 2 approved by the town and did not build layout 2, then that takes us off the hook. And in this case, they got an approval from the town to build what we had approved, which was layout 2, and they built layout 3 without resubmitting
right?
a new survey for layout 3 to the town. So again, maybe it's not our fault.
Yeah.
No, in this case too, so I don't know if the Board of Adjustments is how, like, I know with the Planning Board, it goes, it's a recommendation, then it goes to the Board of Commissioners, although since we have all the commissioners here, I don't know, like, I mean, could it be taken up at the commissioner meeting? Even if we don't approve it because of C, could the Board of Commissioners say, hey, we're taking this up and allowing, or, okay.
The Board of
Yeah.
Commissioners could change the setback in total,
Right,
but
But not,
not,
Not
not,
specific.
because that
Property
would be
specific.
sort of spot zoning
Right.
Right.
and,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
We wouldn't want
Yeah,
to have
do it
different
all 50.
setbacks for different people.
Yeah, okay.
So I do think that for D, the intent of the ordinance, like Jeff explained to us, the reasoning for the 20 foot is so that a car can park in front of the garage and not block the sidewalk. They did not actually change where the garage or the house structure is. They just added a porch to it, which is why I think that I would be okay with D. Because the intent is still met, even if we allow it, they still have the same distance to the garage as Plan 2.
Theoretically, just the overhang. So
Is the overhang.
Yeah.
There are other jurisdictions that allow open overhangs into the setback.
But the columns would no longer make an overhang.
No,
If
they
it was-
wouldn't. It
yeah.
still would be if there's not enclosed walls. So, like, I've done it on porch roofs. If it's a screen porch,
Yep.
if you build walls on the porch, but if it's a screen porch, then places like Raleigh will allow encroachment into the setback without a variance for open walled stuff like that. Maybe that's a Board of
Yeah.
Commissioner discussion too, but
It would,
Now, it seemed like decades ago when we did this, a lot of times we voted, there are times we actually did not vote A through D,
Mhm.
but we would vote to approve or deny based on the finding of all of these is an appropriate measure to do so. That way we would not have to actually vote word for word on certain hardships, but still approve it as a totality of the best interest of this is met this way.
I think you can certainly, if you're approving, you can do it all in one go. And you say all of these are met. You have to be voting that, yes, I agree, all 4 criteria are met. If there's a no vote on that and it doesn't pass, then I think the board should clarify, or
Which one?
which
then we'll
yeah,
go
which
back
one
and go
was
through.
not met. But if it's a yes on all 4, then you don't need to break that down.
So, sort of piqued my interest a little bit whenever we started talking about exceptions to the setback and encroaching into. We do have that. I'm not sure it applies here, but I'll read it to you all, and then you can make a decision. Canopies, awnings, open stairways, uncovered porches, uncovered decks, uncovered patios, bay windows, chimneys, and heating units may encroach into the setback up to 3 feet, such that none of the structures mentioned herein shall be closer than 5 feet to the property line. So the ordinance is sort of going down the path of allowing some encroachments for certain items.
That's
Whether it
uncovered though.
allows canopies.
right.
There's some,
That would be a really more a matter of interpretation, I think, for the
Correct.
planning department in enforcing the rules.
Correct.
The issue before the board here tonight is simply, should they get a variance from the setback requirement? So I want to make sure we stick to that.
but is their request in keeping with the spirit of the ordinance, and sort of this is the whole entire ordinance that speaks to that?
Mhm.
Dan's correct, yeah, that could have been an interpretation that I would have put forth when this initially came to me, but
Mhm.
I didn't do that. We just decided to come on to you guys.
That's fine.
and-
We're all
and get
here to
relief.
explore all of this.
That's right.
You find those things, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, the whole purpose of a board of adjustment, to adjust something. Do you guys want to do it all in one shot?
Yeah.
We'll try it that way, and if it doesn't work, we'll go back. step by
One
step.
quick question. So,
Yeah.
is there anything, so, I mean, I think it's like, I seem to be a little bit stuck on C. If there was anything that, I don't know, someone else came along, let's say a year later in similar situation, like maybe they had a bad reputation of doing this, could it come back and bite the town?
As a general rule, you want to decide cases the same way, but each case is different. So
Okay.
each circumstance is different, and you're really, you're not creating binding precedent here because this is about this particular property.
Okay.
And stuff affecting the
Correct. The evidence that's been presented tonight, and that may be different in another case. It may be similar, but slightly different evidence, slightly different property, location, issues. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Wordsmithing here, trying to figure out how to say it properly. So prior to actually making a motion,
Mhm.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to present the wording. I would vote in favor of allowing the variance for this piece of property based on evidence presented and the intent to follow our ordinances, to the finding of fact A through D.
You need to find all 4 facts to grant the variance.
Okay. So would I have to say A, B, C, and D, or do we have to vote on them all?
Well, you could say I vote that the criteria are met and we allow the variance, but you have to, the motion has to encompass that all 4 are met
Okay.
to approve the variance.
All right, in that case, I make a motion that we approve the variance for this piece of property. Sorry. Based on the finding of the affirmative of A, B, C, and D, based on the evidence presented.
And that's an acceptable motion up for the vote.
Okay. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed? So that's 6.
That's 4/5.
So it's approved. All right. Thank you, guys. We're going to move on to number 2. I'll open the public hearing for special use permit application.
Thank you, members of the board. Tonight you have a special use permit to allow for an 8-foot high fence along the entrance at Rawls Church Road for the White Oak Crossing neighborhood. So this is this is Rawls Church Road here. They have a small entrance here. This is the zoning. You can tell that it's Andrew R10. So the ordinance, what it speaks to is that we have 6-foot high fences are allowed by permit in residentially zoned areas. If you would like anything higher than a 6-foot high fence, it's a special use permit and the criteria that go along with a special use permit. The applicant is requesting to install an 8-foot high fence along this red line here. This is Oriole Drive, a new street that's going to be built or under construction now. And as you can see, it's off Rawls Church Road. So this is the area that an 8-foot high fence would be, is requested. All other locations within the subdivision would have to adhere to the ordinance or get a special use permit for a higher fence. The applicant is here and can answer any questions that you have. This is the ordinance here, and you can see ordinance 4 there. Or regulation 4 says fences with a height above 6 feet may be approved on residential properties with the approval of a special use permit issued by the Board of Adjustment. I can answer any questions, or the applicant is here and can answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Jeff, or would you like to hear from the applicant?
Good evening. Thanks, Jeff. I did have a presentation that I wanted to share. It's just a couple pictures, and just really what I wanted to highlight today was kind of the topography of the site, which is really what's driving why we are requesting a higher fence or a taller fence. From the entrance that Jeff showed off of Rawls Church Road down to, we have a stream crossing where we really want to end the fence. There's 30 foot of drop over, it's about almost 400 feet. So when you pull into the subdivision, it's very challenging to kind of block adjacent properties. We've been able to do that successfully on one side because we have a landscape buffer that will be installing that will conform to the town's requirements for, I think it's a type A buffer. So we've been able to add a berm, plant the trees. That's definitely going to help shield that side of the property. On the side that we're requesting a special use permit for, there's not going to be a buffer there. There's not enough space from the right-of-way to the property line. So we are requesting to install an 8-foot fence to help really just keep privacy to the existing homeowners. At the same time, we have 7 homes that will be built there in the future to try to keep some privacy to those future homeowners as well. If you could just click to the next slide. Oh, that's right. So this is just the grading plan. You can see it's definitely been a challenging site just with the topography of it. But you can see, I kind of noted there, it drops 30 feet over. It's about 380 feet. And you can kind of see that from this picture. I took with a drone, so it's not quite eye level. But as you get down towards where this second dozer is here, just kind of back here is where we would be ending the fence. I can provide some photos kind of looking from the lots out to those properties there. Just kind of show what we're really trying to.
And that last picture, would you go back to that one? So that white pickup truck is probably about 6 feet tall, for everyone's reference. And that is not even the ground they would be building this fence on. It would be down lower than that.
Right, and I'm sure maybe some of you may be thinking, is the 8-foot really going to complete? There's nothing we could really do to completely shield the 2 neighborhoods, unless you guys would like to approve a 20-foot fence. I don't think I want to build one.
I think you could build one and keep the structure inside your setback for it to stay up.
Right.
Without
So
piers.
we're really just looking for anything we can get to help the situation. And we've had our landscape architect that we use in other communities kind of advise us as to what would be the best course of action to take. And really that's what he arrived to, and that's what we would like to request. So.
Are you guys going to build a berm structure and then put the fence on top of it?
We won't be building a berm, but we are going to do everything we can from the sidewalk, because there is sidewalk running along that side, from the sidewalk to the property line. Bring up that grade as much as we can. That's allowable. We need to have a somewhat of a gentle slope, 3-to-1 slope to tie back to the existing grade. But anything we can do to manipulate the grade to help us bring that up, we are going to do that as well.
Did you say, I heard you say something about vegetation. Would there be any vegetation, like, with that fence, or?
There is no planned buffer of any sort. We are working within, I think it's maybe less than 5 feet. There's going to be, you got curb, sidewalk, and then you've got about 5 feet before the property line hits. So we don't have a lot of room to work there. So we won't. Our plan is not to put any sort of vegetation there right now.
How far is the property line from the center of the road?
I think it's a 50-foot right-of-way, so that puts you at 30 feet. So 25 feet to the right-of-way, and then we have 5 feet to the property line. So center of road to property line would be 30 feet, about.
How far towards Rawls Church will that fence go? Yes, sir.
What really is an 8-foot fence going to do versus a 6-foot fence?
I'm sorry.
What is the actual thing that an 8-foot fence is going to accomplish versus a 6-foot fence?
Yeah, so I wish I had these pictures. We did go out there with a 6-foot pole, 8-foot pole, 10-foot pole, and really the first time we were looking at it was more so from the perspective somebody would get as they drive into the community. So when we did that, we found that there is a little bit of a difference with the 8-foot fence. You're covering a little bit more of some of the trailers on that property. We went back and forth about the idea of a 10-foot high fence. We've seen it done before. Our fence contractor had some concerns with the stability of it, so we didn't want to go as high as 10. So that's where we arrived at 8. It slightly improves it, and slightly for us means a lot in the sales world. Anything we can do to help that situation and kind of make that more private for those homeowners or anybody turning into the community is definitely a big help to us. So
I think my main concern is going to be for cars as they're coming out and coming in for visibility.
I see that. Yeah, and like I mentioned, we can certainly
Taper off.
Well, I don't know if 6 or 8 would matter if you're in a car anyway, but it clearly needs to be out of the sight triangle.
Yeah.
Well, 100%. When you look at where the red line is, and since this is a variance, this would allow him to put it pretty much where he says he's going to put it. That would be horrible coming around Rawls Church at that hill. The change of elevations. We just did the same thing with a land monument that was put in the spot that we listened to a case. I driving out that way, because guess what? Everybody drives out Rawls Church Road, know exactly where it is. It is very clear that you're putting a fence there so to obscure the view of the neighbors. But there are 14 other trailers on the other side of the highway. There's a ton of other ones there. And now you're going to build an 8-foot fence on the property line that has a lot of more effect on those people. You actually are causing an effect to the neighbors by having an 8-foot fence dropped in on the property line. I would have loved to have seen a better design going into the property. But I wasn't here at that point. But yeah, putting the road right there just opened it all up. So you wasn't required a buffer, didn't have to do anything over there. You know, my question is, why is there no buffer on that side? But there's a buffer behind the new homes that are gonna get built.
Yeah, I can't speak to the design because this was a project where we came in and essentially went under contract for entitled lots. So we were not driving the design. So unfortunately, I can't speak to that. But I do understand your concern with our location of the fence. And to be fair, there wasn't what's there now. There's there's some smaller trees there, but there's really nothing significant that's creating a buffer between the two properties. So I think we thought having something there versus nothing would be helpful, whether that's, a foot on our property, so we're not, getting too close, 2 feet, whatever it may be, to keep it off their property line. That was really our intent with this, amongst other things.
Could you accomplish your goal by planting a row of fast-growing hedges that in 3 years they're going to be 8 foot tall and obscure the view just like the fence would?
It's fast.
Yeah, so if we were to, we've already planted the buffer on the backside.
Mm-hmm.
It'll take a couple, year, for example, for those hedges to be fully grown, or for more than a year. The fence is a way for us to get that buffer now.
But it
I
could
guess-
be accomplished with plants, with hedges or trees or boxwoods.
I guess you could say it could be. I would say we would probably have to have some sort of easement to allow for maintenance on that side, and just with that 5 feet, I guess you could say we could do that, but
It just would be a long-term fix, not a short-term fix.
yeah,
It probably would be an easier fix.
maybe easier in a year and a half when they're
When
grown.
it's grown up
Yeah.
and you don't have to do anything but trim it. And you don't even have to do that if it's on a property line, if it's just a shrub.
In preparing for the red line and the dashes, is that like, that's where we want it, or was this so we can have something to show you?
Yeah, that was just me drawing a line showing where the fence is gonna go.
Do you understand the concern for the fence going that close to that at 8 feet tall with
Yeah, I can
The-
understand that.
hill coming from the left?
Yeah.
Because that'll be a tough.
I don't know if you have this image in your presentation so anyone else could see it, but we have got an image that is not the topographical one that has a red line drawn for where the fence is proposed. I don't know if you have that one. We've got it.
Yeah, I don't have it in this presentation, unfortunately. Just
And
this
if
picture.
and if Everett's correct that if we approve this variance, then we're basically approving this drawing. And that drawing shows
It's all
the
way up
fence
here.
going ahead of the stop line in the pavement.
Just to clarify, it's a special use permit.
Yeah, I'm
right?
not sure you're
Not a variance.
approving them to ask the town with a permit
Right,
to have an
yeah.
8-foot high fence. Where that fence is gonna be located has not been determined, and all the other ordinance requirements, site distance triangles and such, will be applied when that permit is, requested of the town.
Okay.
They can't go forth, if you all approve it, they can't build it tomorrow without a permit, and all those things being
All right.
looked at.
So approving the
Not
special use permit is only for the height of the fence and not necessarily
We're
the
not
placement of the
varying the
fence
ordinance.
shown.
Yeah, it's a little strange that it's a special use permit and not a variance.
Yeah.
But that's how the ordinance was written.
Height of the fence.
Out of the fence only.
Because that means every other ordinance still applies.
Right.
Or-
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
Because we're not varying the ordinance.
They may choose to do only half of it. You're not,
They may
saying
still
tonight you
choose to
have
build it
do-
6
Yeah.
feet.
They may choose to build it 6 feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what's the fence being proposed being made of? Or,
It's a wood fence.
okay, just like,
I don't know if there's a project down the road, Sherry Downs has a wood fence around it, very similar.
Who,
to what
who would be the responsible for the maintenance of that fence in the ongoing years?
it would be the HOA that maintains that.
So in this drawing, and I'm looking at the packet that was put together, it looks like the sidewalk is this slightly hazy, spotted piece, and then there's going to be a little bit of possible grass on the outside of it. Or is the white going to be the sidewalk?
The sidewalk is that
Right.
Okay.
speckled.
Because I was thinking it'd be mighty dangerous to have a fence like that right beside the sidewalk. Because if my kids are going to go ride a bike up there and come down that hill real fast,
At minimum, it's 5 feet from the sidewalk. From the,
It won't be, 5 feet from the sidewalk puts you right at the property line.
right,
So that
so
would
it'll
be
be
the,
less,
yeah, it would probably
Yeah.
be a foot inside that.
on the drawing that we have, there's a piece that's listed as, I think it's like an OS 11. It's a grayed out piece beside lot. The ability to blow things up makes it very easy. 226. What is that?
That is up here, can't see it there, but that's open space. There is a buffer requirement, along the back of those lots and then coming up that open space. There will be a planted buffer there as well. Not on all of it, but
Yep.
10 foot from.
Is that open space? Walkway, play space? What is that designed to be, or just open area? Because in my opinion, since it's a special use, that's about where the fence should start, even with that. And I say for safety reasons, an 8-foot fence coming up an elevation like that, people are going to, once again, we know they're going to try to leak out into the neighborhood to see it. And at best, you have one car looking down Rawls Church, down that hill. And it would be nice to have a little more additional sight. So the trailers, I don't think they're that far forward, but if it could start somewhere really beside lot 226, even with that. Because special use permits, we can make a request.
And all that would do is prevent them from building the fence over 6 feet up until that point. Which I'm not opposed to, just clarifying that they still, if all other ordinances allowed, could extend 6-foot fence.
They would still have to get the permit for it.
Right.
Could you just build a 2-foot berm and then put a 6-foot fence on it and not worry about it?
they're only working with 3 feet.
They don't have enough
Because
space.
there's 5 feet from the
Yeah,
edge of
if
the
I could-
sidewalk
If
to the
I could
property.
build a 5-foot berm,
Yeah,
I'd do it.
Yeah.
And put the fence
Yeah.
on top. It's just we don't have the real estate to really create too
Right.
much height there. So we had a little more real estate on the other side where we were able to create a little bit of a taller berm and plant the buffer on top of that.
And how many total lots did y'all get in this piece of property? 226, is that it?
That's correct for both, for the total east and west side, it's 226. Yep.
And it was 20, what was it, 22 acres, 24 acres all total? I can remember.
Yeah.
Are there any more questions? Or are you guys ready to discuss? All right, then I'll close the public hearing. Everett, I'm not opposed to your idea if we're allowed to apply that condition that it doesn't extend past lot 226.
I believe you can, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe you can apply a condition to a special use permit, so.
I'm not opposed to that. I mean, it's an effort that we take to ensure that site triangle is as well as we can right here tonight.
So consider the angularity of that lot too, how, you know, it turns back up into that. So to consider it, you see how it faces into the front left corner?
Mhm.
You know, if we follow that whole property line hard on the corner, you're not gonna have the same amount of buffer on.
Yeah, perpendicular to the road, I guess, but it's still it would have your whole car ahead of it. Top to top.
Yeah.
Or we could specify a number of feet.
Yeah, I would be more inclined to specific footage, like feet.
Mm-hmm.
But I would want to know what the site triangle allows before I made that decision as well. You know, and so without that being, I'm not inclined to set rules where they're not necessary, you know.
Well, this also, and this is thinking of other projects in the area. A fence was allowed up here on 210 to be a 6-foot high fence. And Jeff inherited this one. This was not your fault by any means. You got this one landed in your lap, but it was allowed to do it right to the edge of Highway 210. And then we had to, luckily, once again, I wasn't here, but we had to, y'all worked very hard with the landowner to reduce the size of it. I want to make sure we don't let
Yep.
that happen to start with.
Absolutely.
Because technically it may have been within the site triangle, but it sure wasn't in the site triangle where I want to have
Where I
coming
wanna be
over a
seeing.
hill, driving around a hill.
Yep.
Yeah,
Mhm.
100%.
Can a condition of this, Dan, be that they are not allowed to build any fence past a certain point? Or is that,
I think the condition has to essentially help them meet the criteria of the special use permit. So I think a condition that requires something elsewhere is probably not.
Okay.
Unless the 8-foot tall fence would impact some other area of the property that you're trying to address impact on that.
Mhm.
Conceivably.
Can you go back to the picture that has where you see the mobile home, the end of the mobile home?
This one?
No, before that. See, so if you put an 8-foot fence there, that mobile home is higher than that 8-foot fence is going to be. So it's not really going to protect any site from that other, where those trailers are at. So I'm not sure what the benefit of I know you want something, but I don't know that what this much is going to make that difference.
You know, if you were standing in the yard,
Yeah.
right, but if you're in the mobile home,
Yeah, you're going to be
Well, if you look at the change of elevation, the mobile homes, in order to be level over there, are going to be 3.5 feet high on one side and a foot high on the other.
Mhm.
So you're going to have a whole lot more elevated than just a flat surface. I mean, jokingly, you're right. 10-foot would have been almost perfect, but that would have been hard to build, and that would have been
I did think
that
it
would
would
that would
almost
look
be an
weirder.
eyesore.
Yeah.
yeah.
We'd be approaching
for the mobile home
a-
side?
like
that wouldn't be
arrogantly.
great.
It would look like the big ones around Raleigh. Reducing all their noise around their bypass, which I
Love
didn't
that.
get.
ordinance around the bypass, yeah.
We'll put a concrete wall.
And even right at the road, so if you were to pull up, I guess it's white line, black, and to look left, I mean, you've still got, if that sidewalk is, 4 feet wide or whatever, you would have a good 10 feet from the fence to the road. So at least to the picture that we're, I think most of us are looking at, I mean, at least in that picture, even if you were to encroach on the white line, it looks like you'd be able to see beyond the fence, or the fence wouldn't. From the,
Yeah. That did it.
Here's the road
Yes,
here.
ma'am.
yeah,
A lot of sight that we, please not take here. Car won't be able to see.
but I guess that's assuming that you stop
Yeah.
before the.
Everett's proposal is that this buffer like the
Oh,
dash
okay,
line,
okay.
so that the build not happen before that open space.
Oh, okay.
And
At
that
least
the
not
open
at 8
space, yeah, right, at least not at 8 feet, because they would be allowed to build at 6 feet. But cutting that off, my question is that angularity gonna shorten that up anyways, but
Mm, yeah.
Well, it's 25 feet. That OS 11.
Yeah.
It's 25 feet wide.
well,
Yeah. But if a car pulls up here,
25 feet. I don't know that 2 feet.
Yeah.
2 feet on the fence is not gonna matter.
I've seen 4 foot, depending on the elevation of the road, a 4 foot bush can keep
Well-
15 cars. So.
And as
No,
much
his
as I,
house is already,
do love
they're not,
my buffers, and I spent a lot of time talking about them in this town. You would almost have to put irrigation over there. The buffers are gonna grow. If you have a decent sized buffer, you would have to lots of tree maintenance to keep them off the sidewalk. And let's be honest, we know 90% of buffers, the predominant tree, you get 1 or 2 that die. There's this massive gap in it. I mean,
I think if he could do a buffer, I think
if they could totally hide it with
A buffer,
15-foot
yeah.
trees, they would.
They would.
They
They
would
would
do
totally do
that.
it.
Yeah.
so. I don't know that a fence isn't necessarily first anyway. Are we talking about 380 feet of fence? Because I know that you mentioned that rock was 380 feet. So I'm
Yeah, roughly. We haven't decided the
Yeah.
full length.
right.
Uh,
Okay.
It was just
Which
more
is
for
not-
the visual.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Will you bring up the criteria for us?
If a motion was, or if a motion was going to include some kind of condition, that condition needs to be named, or those
Yes.
conditions
So,
should be.
yes, and I think what you would want to say is, and you could do it the same way, if you think the criteria are met, you would say that the criteria are met with the following conditions in place.
Mm-hmm. And what's the vote requirement for special use? Remind
There's
me.
no supermajority requirement, it's just majority vote.
Just simple majority. Okay.
so simple majority on the findings of fact, the 5, or the motion itself.
So, well, it's the same thing as
could
the
do a lump
variance.
motion.
In order to grant the
With a-
special use permit, you need to find that all 5 conditions are met.
Mm-hmm.
And you could do that by voting one at a time, or someone can make a motion that all 5 are met and approve it with the
Mhm.
condition.
A motion with the criteria, with the condition, the 18 or 25 feet for
What is that line, Jeff, that is on this drawing here?
Property line?
What do we call that line where lot 226 meets OS? Well, where OS 11 ends
Well, you're telling
by
me
Ross
open
Church.
space is 25 foot.
Open space line, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the line is drawn across the street too. So I'm just curious to know what the technical name of that line is.
I don't know if they're the same line. I think maybe
gonna
that
go
line
by
is different.
From where?
The open space would butt up to the right of way. So
Yep.
if you wanted to reference a line,
Say 25 feet back
From
from the
the
right of
right-of-way.
way.
probably be
Is this the line you're talking about, Bob?
Yeah.
Front end of that open space.
That may be just a determination, like this line here, just the width, the right-of-way width.
Mm.
I think that's what that line is.
Yeah.
It just happens to coincide
Yeah,
with
that's-
this line here.
I like those coincidental things.
Right. Yeah, RW is right away right here, but so that you got sidewalk coming on the other side of
I
open
think
space.
Yeah, I think that's 25.
Yeah, this is 25, then you got sidewalk,
Okay,
and
so
then
that'd be,
grass and right away.
okay.
So 25 feet from the right of way is not even as deep as the open space goes.
I just, you know, if we go ahead and do something to make it like, fence can't start before
Oh,
property.
there's the right of way.
Lot
Yeah.
25
20.
or 226.
Yeah, yeah,
26.
that'd be easy.
Yeah. And also, before we make the motion, because I plan to make the motion to say edge of lot 26 and the open space. Is that okay with you? Would that be heartbreaking for you?
And
Can we?
I will say, the applicant does need to agree to the condition.
Yeah. Yeah.
At what point do we ask him to agree to that?
Uh-huh.
I think now's a great time.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
You understand our concern, I guess.
Yeah.
Without
Right
being
here.
out there and having that location marked, I can't say, I don't think that it would be a problem.
Yeah, and again, this is just for the 8-foot height, so you could still do 6 from there to however far you're allowed to otherwise. And on this part of the property, I don't think 6 is the problem. I think it's further back where 6 is the problem.
I would argue to you that the 6 feet is still a concern. So visibility out of that driveway to the left is namely the concern. You know,
Yeah, I'd be okay with approving that condition.
is that consideration.
As long as it
Be-
meets also the criteria, meet the sight line.
Mm-hmm. Which we don't have.
Right. It'll still
in
meet,
the
it'll
other
still have to meet all other written criteria in the ordinances.
Yeah. All right.
Motion to approve the special use permit condition that the 8-foot high not start ahead of
Lot 226.
lot 226 as it, facing, facing the right of way.
I got you.
And that all the other requirements having to be met
With the condition in place.
with the condition.
Was that actual motion or
It was
practice?
an no, it was actual. It was
Okay.
actual. Want to reread it?
I don't think
Yes,
you need to.
I want you to rewrite it.
Does everyone understand the motion? All right.
Is it all what we,
Yeah, I think what you're saying is that all the conditions are met with the condition, or all the criteria are met, assuming that condition is in place, which the applicant has agreed to. And with that, there's a motion to approve.
Okay. All those in favor, raise your right hand. That's unanimous. All right. I have
But
to
you
go
threw
back
the-
to my cheat sheet here.
you
All right.
the ringer?
Well, that's it. That one's approved with that condition. I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion
No.
to adjourn.
No, I have a question first.
Use it.
I will tell you very clearly, there's no way I would have voted for the initial project based on his application if he did not bring additional supporting information. I think for our packets, we need better pictures, we need better stuff in there.
That's a
Either-
variance. It has to be, testimony has to be given in this venue.
Okay.
Not prior to. You're not supposed to go to the sites. You're not supposed to.
So him
te-
bringing that
And it is-
supplement
it
was
is-
appropriate to bring it tonight.
Correct.
It is their obligation to bring the evidence
Right.
to show that they meet the
Really,
the
all your,
criteria.
the request is the request, and you come and you meet and you hear his explanation.
Because yes, if he hadn't have done, because his picture that he sent us was a vacant lot.
Yeah.
We all know that that neighborhood is being heavily built right now. I mean, I would have said
Well,
no
so it
unless
sounds
he
like he
actually
did
gave
read.
us something to look, to vote on.
Yeah.
So,
The aerial, that was
Case by
from
case.
me, that was from staff, that was what GIS currently has available. It is up to the applicant to produce whatever he feels, he or she feels
Yeah.
will help his case.
Yep.
And I think he did so to, at least show you what's out there today. That's the variance. Now, on a special use, they can provide all the documentation, and I can give that to you.
All right, let's have a motion.
Make a motion to adjourn.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. We are adjourned.
Thank you, board.
Thank you, Jeff.
But you were in a hurry. You were in a hurry to get here. Now you're in a hurry